Hello, world. Welcome to the PocketGamer.biz podcast. I'm your host, Peggy Anne Salz. Brian Baglow isn't here at the moment, but he will be back. He is out there at events and speaking engagements and finding great people for our show, which brings me to where we are right now because I was out recently also at a couple of events and I was blown away by the interest in alternative channels to reach players. Fortunately, we have a number of them to choose from, and we'll be talking about them in the show. You know, everything from D2C and web shops to rewarded. Rewarded ad platforms are also alternative UA channels, and they have huge benefits, but also some issues that we don't talk about too often. So I found someone who is frank, straightforward, I would say straight talk today with our guest, who is Alex Hrankin. He is CEO of Scrambly. And as I said, Alex, building you up for this, we are going to have a candid discussion about what marketers need to know as they focus on implementing rewarded ad campaigns, right? That's the idea. So have you come with some thought grenades for us?
With a ton of those. Thanks
A
for
ton of those. Oh boy, that sounds like one heck of a show. Then I'll strap myself in for this one, Alex. I will. So, a little bit of background on yourself. Of course, CEO of Scrambly. You're originally from the Ukraine, and then you moved to Italy, and you led a sales team at MAF, and then you co-founded Scrambly. So here you are, 1 million users in the U.S. and counting. So, yeah, how's it been? Quite a ride for you as well. How old is Scrambly?
It's been just 2 years and a half. Such a ride. It's been crazy, but we cannot be happier.
So you've had an impressive journey, as we said, a company in this space. But again, that's not all you do, right? Everyone is more than a title, and you have a background in amateur boxing. I had to say that one blew me away because I think of you as just like this super, focused, data centric person as I've been chatting with you. But I have to ask you then, how does the experience in boxing shape your approach to this industry and basically what you're doing, which is reshaping rewarded?
That's actually a great question, and not a lot of people know this little fact about me. But on top of actually being in boxing for almost 12 years in the past, I went to a military school, military university, and I had some time competing in boxing, and how this impacted my career and building Scrambly essentially is sports. What it do to any person is helping them build a habit of consistency and discipline. And this is the most important thing in business and in your career. If we cannot really keep going with something for a long period of time, as long as it's very hard, there is basically nothing we can achieve. And boxing for 12 years, and I had like a little over 30 amateur fights, helped me actually build the consistency and the discipline of going through rough times and really, yeah, sticking up for myself at some things, but not physically, of course.
Gut grit. I like that. Um, what's also interesting is Scrambly's approach because you have a FinTech component, which I thought was intriguing. How does that affect your approach to user quality, retention? Because FinTech, yes, we gamify FinTech, but you have a FinTech component in what you're offering the gaming industry.
The reason we wanted to implement a fintech component, and by that we mean a know your customer, very advanced verification that is used by fintech companies, just because we wanted to improve the user quality and the user reach that we will be offering to publishers and advertisers that we work with. When I used to work with different UA channels, reward UA channels back before Scrambly, the biggest problem was that the user quality was on a lower level. Why? Because users were solely interested in the rewards, in earning money quick, and that was one of the biggest problems. And the second problem was user level fraud. There was a part of the users abusing the offer was trying to get money, not in a legitimate way. And when we built Scrambly, first days in, we noticed that we were getting 70% of organic users, which were like hundreds, thousands of users, and we were like super pumped about it. However, it came to my mind that it was impossible to get this number of organic users the first days, and these users were actually cashing out some real money from Scrambly. And we figured with my co-founder and CTO, Ilya Francevsky, that we had to do something about it. So we implemented a robust AI know your customer verification that makes users take a picture of their ID and take a selfie. And this is how we make sure that those all users are legit. Uh, they don't open duplicate account and they don't try to abuse our system, which is directly correlated with the advertiser CPIs and their ROAS.
Okay, so that's the way to make sure they are who they say they are. And then you have players and you get around some of those pitfalls there. But there's more than that, right? Because rewarded traffic, yes, it can drive installs. It can drive even more, doesn't always guarantee quality users. So other than the pitfall that you just discussed, maybe you can go into a little bit more about user quality. It's one thing if they're cashing out, but there are other aspects you have to keep track of.
No, absolutely. Essentially, building an Offerwall, building a solution that rewards users for something, it attracts a lot of users who want to earn money. But publishers, IP-driven advertisers, which have the vast majority of the budget in the ecosystem here, they are looking for users who want to spend money, not earn money. And that's the biggest pitfall here, because Offerwalls organically and through the paid channels attract a lot of low-quality users who want to earn two quick bucks, and that's about it. And they're not going to be spending, they're not going to retain in the games that are promoted on across the offer walls after the rewards run out. Let's take as an example any social casino game which has a break even period of 360 days. So there's supposed to be a part of users that retain for a year, and a part of those users, maybe like 3-4% of those users, are supposed to be gaming whales to cover for the whole UA cost, right? And it's very hard to attract those users through the solutions that attract low quality users, rewarding them for doing simple activities, because the vast majority of those users, they just want to earn $5 at all costs because they are low
They do
income.
it quickly, right? They're not
Yeah,
going
they
to
want to do it quickly. They are low income users, so it's very hard to attract high quality users there. And on top of it, as I mentioned, there's going to be a part of those users who want to abuse the system by not even engaging with the games themselves, or engaging with them not in a legitimate way, just to get even more of those money by that inflating the CPIs and drowning the ROAS of advertisers. So those are the biggest problems of rewarded UA, things that we can dive into.
So it's really about watching a lot what the player does, and you have to have a deeper understanding of that. So that gets me to the whole idea of like, what does behavior look like for a high value player? I mean, what do they look like? How do we know the difference between a high value player who's for real and maybe someone who's trying to literally game the system by, trying to skip levels or do something or be more intense? Because some players really do like the game and will play it and will look a little bit as if they're a little bit odd, perhaps, to the and you want to make that decision. So what are you using to find the signs of high value players?
The first thing that what I'd be doing is analyzing their purchase behavior when they start making their first in purchase, and how their retention rate looks like. At the same time, their ROAS progression. If it's dropping at some point, or it just goes steady, of course, it's going to be going down based on the game. But usually, those are the first signs that you should be looking at when basically looking for a high value user.
Okay, so that means they're purchasing. They're not. They're not consistent. They're having their ups and their downs, just like a real human being. Is that what I'm hearing here?
Exactly, but there are basically three very specific metrics that you should be looking at. The first one is the install to purchase rate. This is a very basic. The first one is average number of purchases that the purchasing user makes, average revenue per user, and average revenue per paying user. So, and if those metrics come in one place, you can easily understand even during the upper funnel behavior that this user might have a higher quality.
So that's the higher quality. How about the difference between a high value user and a bad actor in a rewarded network? That's that little bit of the bad actor will be maybe more active than the high value user. But that's what I'm thinking. But you're watching it. What are you seeing? What are those signs?
Let's define a bad actor, whether it's a user that is trying to game the system or if it's just a lower quality user
Yeah.
potentially. Which one do you think
Well,
we
I'm
should?
thinking about someone who's trying to game the system because that's definitely fraud. I mean, high value, low value, that's kind of obvious. A low value will not be making purchases. It's a player who's not going to be highly engaged. Probably there's other ways to monetize them, but rewarded won't be it.
No, absolutely. So essentially, when assessing a user that tries to game the system, the first sign is going to be them going through the user funnel too quickly because they're trying to get as much rewards as possible from the Offerwall. This is the first thing. So they're going to be completing levels in a very abnormal way. And secondly, there's going to be huge retention rate and ROAS drops. And on top of it, you can also look at the IPs to understand if there is something suspicious going on, like duplicated IPs across a lot of different installs or potential users with using residential proxies or VPNs. So that those are one of the most significant flags that you should be watching out for.
So let's stay with the fraud. Um, you see that happening. You'll see that in the signals. I have done a lot of work on that since the earlier days with the MMPs, and we were talking about what kind of fraud, and there's 9 types of fraud. I mean, you can make a science out of fraud, but at the end of the day, what can you do to counteract the bad actors?
From the publisher side, it's going to be very hard. So you should just keep in track of what the network is doing, and you should always make sure that the network is very cautious about those things. But from the publisher side, the easiest thing that you can be doing is just, for example, by mm, disabling the offline mode. Like, for example, like if a publisher has an IA game that is IA monetized with ads, then by simply disabling the offline playing mode is going to help a lot. But the whole job, the whole work lays on the network shoulders to make sure that they're not driving any fraudulent users. And the biggest problem here is that the ad network fraud that we are so much aware of, like the one that you can hear about from all the MMPs, etc. It's very scalable, and this was like in the industry like 5-6 years ago, and it was huge. While this is a user level fraud, it's very hard to come across that. It might be 5-7%, and it's going to be dispersed and distributed across tons of installs, clicks, or impressions, mostly installs in events. Hardly findable, like hardly discoverable.
But that's what you're focused on, right? Because you're looking at fraud detection at the user level and you're flagging fraud early on. You're saying, we're looking at the user level data. This looks like a fraudulent player.
Usually, a publisher can easily tell when there is a fraud if a user, let's say, completes a level or in-app event in a very abnormal and quick way. And what a publisher would be doing with NetNet would be saying, look, this doesn't look right. You should be setting some filters for users that complete this event in a too fast way, like too quickly. And in this case, the network essentially would be blocking those users and not charging the advertiser for those users. This is the easiest thing to do. But the if you want to work with the solid you rewarded ad network, these concerns should not be very frequent because the ad network was supposed to done a great job preventing those sorts of things from the beginning.
So, how big is the problem actually of user level fraud that you can detect? Because this is what you're doing. And certainly you have an idea because, of course, you're looking at the data and you're seeing these metrics. And I would assume that you're seeing some patterns as well.
Absolutely, it depends. It really depends on the type of reward that the ad network is providing to their user base. The higher the reward is, the higher potential, the higher chance is that they're gonna get user level fraud because it attracts a lot of bad players as well. When I used to work for MAF, I used to buy from a lot of ad networks, and at some offers they were paying a lot. I saw like up to 30-40% of the user level fraud because it was paying a lot, it was attracting a lot of users. But while you're doing a great job of mitigating those problems and also preventing those problems, it can be 1-2%, and it's not really huge. However, it's always scalable. Unless we fix those 2%, tomorrow it can turn into 20%. It's going to be a big problem for both sides, publishers and ad networks.
So what metrics should a studio, so studios are just starting out, they're just thinking about this, they're really at the point where they're implementing rewarded ad campaigns and thinking about how to use rewarded as a UA channel. So they're thinking also about the metrics to prioritize. You can't really avoid fraud, but you can certainly get a clearer picture of it. So what would you advise? What should they be prioritizing?
They should be prioritizing the upper funnel retention rate and ROAS. Prediction and the progression of the ROAS behavior of the users is going to be very, very different compared to their other channels. Because sometimes publishers come and say, look, we predict ROAS 100% for 180 days, and it's going to be absolutely different for rewarded UA channels. They need to make sure that they are going to be hitting their ROAS break-even point way earlier. They should be looking at their day 1, day 3, day 7, day 14 ROAS and retention rate. And if there is any potential abrupt drops, it might signal a problem, whether the users have low quality or there might be a part of those users fraudulent.
So what exactly, I'm trying to think between a low quality user, maybe someone who's just not interested, right? Some people will never do what you're hoping they will do. So they're either not interested. And then we have bad actors who are really truly low value and you want them out as well. I mean, how do you tell the difference?
Basically, you're going to be seen very aggressive. Like bad actors, they're very greedy. That's the first time. They're very greedy. They're going to be trying to get the highest reward like in 3 days or 4 days, etc. So there is no way somebody can get to level 50, which usually gets completed by other users in 2 months, and they complete it in 4 days. It's like impossible. And you're going to be seeing those signs, and it's like they find a way to crack it, to crack the code, to game the system, and to cash it out. And lower quality users, they're going to be making purchases. Their behavior may be a little more aggressive compared to the non-incentivized channels because they just want the rewards. But they're going to be making some purchases to progress. The lower quality users, they're going to be just having lower ROAS, lower RPU, lower install to purchase rate, and those metrics are going to be on the lower side. But there's not going to be any super abnormal indicators that bad actors would actually bring. Bad actors always trying to get the most out of the systems in the quickest way possible. They are like very greedy.
Okay, so we look for greedy, fast moving players, not necessarily enthusiastic. They're at it for a different reason. This is a lot to watch, especially for studios that are just stretched. I mean, resources are stretched. The numbers, the team numbers, many have been slashed. So where are there shortcuts to do this? Because you're going to look at data anomalies. You have to look at user level data. You have to be looking at behavior, prioritizing the metrics, upper funnel, and then looking also at deeper funnel. There's a lot to do. Is there anything here that will make this just a little bit more streamlined?
The easiest thing to do is to set clear expectations with the net network. Trust is very, very important here. They need to understand what the ad network does about it and how frequently they do something about it, and some sort of reporting if they found any fraudulent patterns in the past for similar games, what they do about it, and how they could actually communicate on a weekly, monthly basis to understand if there is something suspicious going on. At the same time, the easiest way for a resource scarce company to keep track of those things is by simply looking at the ROAS and the retention rate, because retention rate is going to signal you a lot of different things. And ROAS essentially, it doesn't really matter how much you're paying for one single user as long as it brings you money, right? So sometimes it doesn't really matter. Sometimes you're buying users 5 times more expensive on one channel than on the other one, but this user makes you money. And sometimes you might want to tolerate this 1-2% of potential bad actors because the other 98% make money. So just look at ROAS, retention rate, communicate with the net network, and make sure that the upper funnel metrics look great, and rely on the ad network as long as you trust them.
Really good advice. I mean, I have to thank you, Alex, because our audience will say, okay, made a note of that, because that is a really important blueprint to follow. But you're also doing this at Scrambly. And when we were chatting, when we met, it was like, um, some horror stories that you had as well about fraud and some of the bigger issues that maybe we don't understand all the time because there are sort of under the radar signs that many studios simply might be missing because they're looking at so much other data and everything else because this is about a new monetization model and this is something you need to get your head around.
It's very hard. It's very hard. I know. I saw some horror stories. Paying real rewards, it just can bring about a lot of different uh, fraudulent patterns that we could never even think of. So the easiest thing to notice here is when a user signs up to a platform, they start engaging with the offers, and they basically complete 6 different offers that pay more than $100 in like 20 minutes. They try to cash out, but we have KYC here, and KYC doesn't let them cash out. And then we understood that we wanted to prioritize advertisers more, so we moved the KYC upper funnel. So users, in order to engage with the campaigns that we are promoting of our publishers, they need to do the KYC first. And this is how we make sure that those users are legit. But on top of it, users can also manipulate the system even after the KYC, right? Okay, so they're legit, US citizens, EU citizens, etc. They are not duplicate. They have one account because we have their IDs, their data, etc. They start in the system, but we set some filters in place to make sure they never do it.
A little bit like whack-a-mole, isn't it?
We are always at war. Like it's always
Yeah.
war.
Okay. I see that. I totally do. And it's probably, looking to the future, we're shifting. I mean, there is rewarded UA. That's what we talk about. This is our new way of monetizing. And it's good to have choice, but it's also challenging, as we've been discussing. You yourself, you're looking at it, you're in the industry, in this part of the industry for 2 years. What are the biggest shifts that you see coming to rewarded? Are we going to see, for example, new types of engagement or even like bits of tweaking and a twist on the monetization model that we see emerging?
The biggest shift that we're seeing right now is that there is way too many players popping up. This is the first, because the unit economy works for them. So they're driving their UA, it's profitable. They install some other offer walls, they're making some money. However, to scale it further, they're going to need to work with publishers directly. Otherwise, their monetization is going to be on the lower side and UA is not going to be profitable. So I believe there's going to be a big market consolidation. And also publishers, they just cannot work with 20 different rewarded ad networks. They want to work with two tops or three tops. Everybody has resource scarcity. And so there is supposed to be some kind of a market consolidation, and a few players should come on top. That's how I see it. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible to compete in this market for both publishers and the ad networks.
And what about the teams themselves? I remember asking studios, how do you work with your ad network partner? What does that look like? Is it daily calls? Some people had Slack channels, whatever. This is not quite the same level, but there is a lot that you have to be engaging and exchanging with your rewarded ad platform partner. What does that even look like to manage this properly?
It's a great question because a lot of people don't really understand the importance of making life of publishers easier. How we go about this is by actually managing everything ourselves. So we say, look, if you want to pay $5 CPI, let's do it. Just give me your ROAS goals. Open up app events. We're going to take it from here. But at the same time, our goal is to match the right users with the right games by collecting user data. I want to understand who your best audience is. So typically, it looks like publishers would be setting up CPIs, goals, open up some events, and keeping track of progress on a weekly basis in terms of the ROAS metrics, retention rate, and also their spending as well. So those are the most important things. But some of the reward UA players networks, they progress a lot and they make TROS optimization possible. So it's when basically publishers have nothing to worry about as long as they limit their budget and they just look at the results. Let's test it. The difference between rewarded UA channels and, let's say, programmatic channels. or video networks is when you test a rewarded UA network, you're going to see the results immediately. So don't, if a reward UA network says it's going to take us 1, 2 weeks or 3 weeks to optimize, not really. Essentially, when you start a new reward UA channel, you're going to be seeing the best users immediately. So look out for results.
Because you will see some I mean, you can still optimize because algorithms need to learn. I totally get that. But you will see already some of the signs because you talked about that, the patterns and the behavior. So you're going to see that. And then you can decide, do I dial up or down? Speaking about advice, let's wrap it up with a piece of advice you'd give to studios, especially when they're just starting out with rewarded as a UA channel.
This is a great question. So the first thing that I would ask them, the first advice that I would give them is to understand their metrics right. So get their data and metrics right. If they understand that their ROAS 100% kicks in 6 months, they need to structure their prediction around that properly so they can go with some alternative channels like reward UA and also understand the profitability and when the money kicks in. The second thing is they need to have some flexibility to test, add in-app events, give reward UA channels some liberty to optimize and to find the best formula to deliver success. And the biggest advice here would be to really test all the standard channels properly to understand their data and to understand their economy behind this data. And once this works, once the standard channel work, go to rewarded channels, they can make some wonders for them.
Companies that are just starting out with this, they're also going to have to be more focused on not just looking at the results, but looking at those signs. You were talking, for example, the telltale signs of bad actors and people who want to game the system. But I'm also thinking, you know, we're going to see more and more as we have AI. We're going to see more and more that aren't just bad actors who are trying to get through very quickly. Because, you know, there are stories about different regions where, you know, this is a sport. Even if it's not for the money, it's a sport. Like, I'm going to crack it and I'm going to show everybody. But then we've got bots, we've got AI, we have players who aren't players. What does it look like there?
The biggest thing that I've seen so far is we had a few KYC verifications with the deepfake eye faces and also the IDs pictures. So that was crazy. And I had to jump on a call with the KYC provider immediately, say, "Hey guys, what are you gonna do about this? Because our whole fraud protection strategy relies heavily on you, and you work with banks. Of course, there is a bigger responsibility. There's way bigger cash in the turnover." And they implemented a set of rules immediately to mitigate that. But it's crazy. AI is not gonna make fraud detection any easier for sure.
It's going to get quite smart quite quickly. And it's going to look fairly genuine, I can imagine as well. What does that mean for you at Scrambly? Are you having thoughts about broadening how you hunt and find the bad actors, the bots?
We just had to come up with a few ideas, and they've been working great for us. First of all, we check the upper funnel user data once users sign up to understand that they come from the correct countries and their device data looks right. Then once they start engaging with the platform and with the offers, we look at their behavior data. With the KYC in place, we understand that they're legit users, they don't open duplicate accounts. Then once they start engaging with the campaigns more, start making in-app purchases, our algorithm analyzes their behavior, and with those few check points, we basically understand that the users are legit. So it tends to do the job almost to 100% extent. However, it's just a cat and mouse game all the time. So we need to we look into this on a daily basis.
So we're almost going full circle if you think about Alex, because we talked about you have to be disciplined for boxing and sports, right? You have to be focused. You have to not give up. You said at the beginning, I'm not afraid, I'm not giving up. So maybe you leave us with a little bit of advice that maybe brings together sort of like the boxing and the gaming and tell us how to handle this additional load of work responsibility and Yeah, just all of it coming in 2025. What would you say?
What I'm saying to our team is that we are in a very competitive space. Sometimes it's very hard, but we're doing a great job because we're growing 300% year over year. And I'm super grateful to our team. And the only way this is possible is when mentally and physically we are on the right side of things. So I encourage everyone to work out, and this is like the physical fitness helps us with the mental shape as well, and that's the only way we can lash out, let off some steam as well, and it's what helps us um, to go forward and through some very intense challenges that we face on a daily, weekly basis. But I think we're doing great.
That sounds like great advice. And it's also important because we need to stay focused. This is going to be massive. It's going to be a massive market, which is good news for studios. It does work. We can see the positive impact of Rewarded, but with everybody sort of going into it, there's going to be a lot to watch. There's going to be a lot to manage, which is why you're focused on working out in your free time. But we always end it, Brian always says, we bring it full circle. We bring it back to games. We started with games, we end with games. So I'd like to know your favorite game you're currently playing, currently obsessing about, and your favorite game of all time.
The current game that I've been playing, actually, it's been maybe like a few months that I'm playing this game. One of our teammates she was like, you have to play this game. It's awesome. It's Red Shadow Legends of Larium. It's my favorite one. But the biggest one, it comes from my origin, my childhood, is GTA, Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, Vice City. We did it all. It just never dies.
I was going to say, it's a classic. It goes on. That is a good call indeed. Well, Alex, it's been great having you. Also, understanding, the hard truth, the dirty details about fraud. We know what we need to be watching. We know what we need to be watching for in the future. And if the audience wants to watch for you, connect with you, see what you're up to, maybe even just check out at an upcoming event, what's the best way to stay in touch with you?
LinkedIn, we get very close, Slack, but I'm very available to anything. So thank you so much for having me, Peggy. It was
Absolutely, Alex. It's been great and learned a lot is a plus. It's great to have a chat, but then to leave with actionable advice, that is pure gold. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Peggy.
This show is all about how to do your job better, how to make an amazing game, how to market it, and you have a say. So if you have a story or know someone we need to shine a light on, then we would love to hear from you.
We want to hear from you. We want to reflect the reality of the mobile games market in all its wonderful complexity and strangeness. So if you have any suggestions for us, if you have any feedback for us, you can always get in touch. You can email us at podcast@pocketgamer.biz. You can find us on Twitter @PGBiz, and you can reach out to us through the pocketgamer.biz website. If you're interested in listening to all of our podcasts, you can find them at pocketgamer.biz/podcast, and we would love to hear your thoughts on future shows.
And we've got you covered on all the major platforms, so subscribe to the audio podcast, as Brian said. Look for us on YouTube. If you want to read it, hey, you can do that too, because we have a companion post for you as well on the pocketgamer.biz website.
Tune in again for the next edition of the pocketgamer.biz podcast, and we look forward to speaking to you in the near future.